All right. I think we're going to get going. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. My name is Thomas Palmer. I'm the managing director here for OneStream in Asia Pacific. We got a great topic today. We thought we'd get a little bit more specific around our seminars and really kind of focus on this one on, if you made the big investment in SAP, um, what's the alternative on the EPM CPM space? And look, instead of hearing from us, we thought we'd bring some experts, in our industry to the seminar, as well as some clients. And look, we're incredibly excited to have the panels we have today, and hopefully we're going to turn it over to them here in a little bit. The first thing we're going to kind of do is just a quick um, you know, overview of OneStream for those that are new to it. I promise I won't take more than 10 minutes to do that, or 10 to 15 minutes. And then we're going to talk to Scotty Taylor. And I've had the pleasure working with Scott for quite a long time. Scott's really an advisor to CFOs across many of the Aussie businesses that we know and love. And we're going to kind of pick Scott's brain a little bit on what he has seen in the market, around this topic, and look, it ought to be great. I know I'm looking forward to it. Then we're going to hear from Karina and Phil at Seven Group Holdings, and again on this subject as well, and really get a kind of a real life kind of scenario, how things played out and so on. And I can't thank them enough for taking their time in order to do this. And Ben's going to kind of moderate that. Ben's from Tasos, our gold partner here in Australia, and certainly he worked with Seven Group Holdings, throughout their OneStream journey. Um, the that to me is the highlight. I know. I hope everyone got a gin tasting kind of packet in the mail. If you've ever had any alcohol actually from Manly Spirits, I think hopefully you're going to appreciate today. And we're going to have Chris on, and Chris actually, he's my doppelganger. When you guys see Chris come on screen, you're going to realize that we could be twins, and it's kind of weird. I just met Chris today and threw me back. Anyway, all right. So look, let me get into it. A couple polls. First one's kind of fun. Second one's more business. I'm going to kind of roll these, and then we'll jump into a quick demo. I'm sorry, not a demonstration, but a quick overview. All right, beverage of choice. I hope everyone answers gin. Let's see what we got here. Coffee, tea. That's interesting. Had a gin tasting seminar. I love it. Good for you. All right, I think we're almost done. Yeah, I think we're almost done. Wow, there's a lot of people on this. That's great. Okay, so gin wins out. Chris, you'll be happy with that. Gin over whiskey. So look, that's hopefully that was going to be par for course. Let me jump into it. Look, if I had 1 minute or 3 hours to tell you about OneStream, this would be the only thing I'd show you. It defines who we are. It's basically everybody's North Star at OneStream. Um, every OneStream customer that we have is a success. In other words, they're using OneStream for what the project was scoped out to do. They're using the licenses and so on. We actually hand a book of every OneStream client, the name, email, phone number, to any prospective client, to make sure that we keep this as our goal. It's something, again, it's not just from a sales perspective, setting the right expectation, but it's all the way through the organization, from development to customer support and so forth. So it's a very different thing for a software company to come out and say this, but let alone do it. So again, there's one thing to remember. This is it. Just quickly, a little bit about us. If you're familiar with a company called Hyperion, our founders came from Hyperion. They actually ran and developed a lot of the Hyperion tools that, believe it or not, still exist today. Bob and Tom. And what they did in 2008, they kind of stepped away from Oracle Hyperion and say, hey, listen, there's a need for something new out there. And I'll kind of get to that problem here in a second. And they created OneStream with kind of a new concept. What happened over time, we had people like Ben at Tasos and so forth, kind of get an idea of, hey, they created something new and something better. So we had a lot of the partners that were in the Hyperion world come over to Hyperion with a lot of expertise, Scotty Taylor, one of them, and started kind of backing and supporting it. And a lot of people out in the industry kind of followed. And certainly when you have good products and you have really smart people, the industry analysts tend to take notice. And, you know, it's great when you're in top white quadrants and so forth. I mean, we love that. But the biggest one was Gartner puts out a peer-to-peer survey, and that's what our customers say about us. And that's really honestly the only one we focus on. And we've been having the highest marks in that survey for the last 3 or 4 years. Part of that survey is you got to have good products, you got to have really smart people putting them in. But as we all know, software projects, things go you know, sometimes south, and you got to get them back on course. And part of that is good customer support. And you know, when they reinvented the company, kind of the second chance to build their house, they not just did that from a technology perspective, but they also did it from a customer support perspective. You know, they wanted to kind of a new way of doing support in the technology world. And I hope when you ask any of our clients, that's probably the first thing they're going to say is just how responsive and how different the experience is with our support. Earlier, why did Tom and Bob step away from Oracle, and what did they see in the market that needed fixing? And I'm going to kind of build this out, but a lot of us, lived in this finance world for quite a long time. You'll get the problem pretty quickly. The problem is, all of these processes exist daily in the finance space. You have to do stat reporting, you have to do long range planning and so forth. And back in the Hyperion world and many other worlds, like SAP, Oracle and so forth, the way that this is solved is via a specific application. So if you want to do lease accounting, you have a lease accounting application or a cube. And you want to do operational planning, you have that and so forth. And that was great. And these are all very good applications. There's nothing wrong with them. They fit for purpose. The challenge becomes, and the challenge that Tom and Bob saw in all of our clients was, how do you connect all these? And not just from a technology or data perspective, but from a timing and synchronicity of it, right? How do you connect them? When do you connect them in order to come to the table with truly one version of the truth, right? And that's something that we kind of left up to our clients to do. And they said, look, we need to fix this. We need to kind of take the next step, the next evolutional step in the whole EPM, BPM space. And to do that, we can't start where we ended. We have to kind of start anew with a new concept. And, Oracle said, hey, listen, just put cloud on it. And again, it kind of makes it harder. So they said that, look, we really have to step back and we got to kind of innovate from a concept and from a technology perspective. So what OneStream really is one application, very important point, one application that manages multiple financial processes, multiple metadata, and so forth, all within one application. So everything from financial close to reporting to budgeting and planning and getting that data in and getting it validated all happens in one application. We don't have it on here, but I think all of us have mobile phones. The quick analogy to this is, look, in 2007, what did Apple really do to us? It gave us one platform that replaced our digital camera, our BlackBerry, our car navigation system, and so forth, all in one platform. Tom and Bob took that same concept, moved it over to EPM, created one application that had some core services on it like your mobile phone has location services, right? But it's got some core services on it, financial close, budgeting, planning, so forth, that then can be extended by downloading more functionality. So for us, what we do is we use what we call our marketplace, where we take that core platform, and let's say we want to do account recs. We download from our marketplace our account rec solution. It's not a starter kit, it's not a template. It's a full-fledged solution that then locks into that platform and extends the use of it, all with one license, with one learning curve, right? There's one database behind it, and so forth. So it just makes it very, very easy to then extend the use of OneStream across multiple financial processes, and takes all the complexity out of connecting everything. Again, for those of us that have been doing this for a while, the challenge then really is, how do you deal with the dimensionality a user wants to see when we're doing budgeting at a certain level in a certain department across a certain set of, my buys, my business, by geo, by time, and so forth. How do you do that and also do high level reportings on your actuals, right? Or statutory reporting and so forth. Those are two very, very different structures. How do you do that in one application? So Tom and Bob had to create something. There had to be some innovation. And one of those innovations is what's on top. It's called extensible dimensionality. And really, it's kind of a big term, but the idea behind it and the concept behind it is that it allows the ability for any user to see the buys of their business in whatever process that they're doing at whatever level they want, all within one application. What kind of makes everything possible. We're the only ones that can do this. Then the ability to go from high level aggregation all the way down to transactional data. Again, that's a big thing we've been trying to do to Hyperion forever, is I want to go from my P&L and I want to see some invoices that make up, a certain transaction. And I don't want to leave OneStream. That's another big innovation that they created. We talked a little bit about the marketplace solutions, and really the other part is the mixing of really, really high volumes of transactional data with the ability to slice and dice that. We call it financial signaling. And what that means is that before, I couldn't bring in transactional level data. So I'd have to wait, to the end of month to do variance reporting to figure out what happened in my business. But now, because we combine those relational database technologies with multidimensional technology, I can bring in yesterday's data at a transaction level and figure out what signals in my business I want to look at that happened yesterday or last week. I don't have to wait till 30 days. So again, it's kind of transforming things. It's probably the biggest aha moment for a lot of people. And then no two OneStream applications I've seen, and I have the pleasure of seeing close to 50. It look the same, and there's a reason for that. And OneStream, the whole concept of being able to configure your workflow, your process, down to the person, and not having to try to fit into a canned process that exists in a tool. It's really powerful, and it's something that we're very proud of, and it's a game changer when it comes to ability to adapt and to adopt a new system. All right, that's enough about me. Enough about OneStream. Enough from me. Look, I have the pleasure of introducing Scotty. Scotty, can you come on screen there?
Yeah, how's that? Did that work?
Oh, that worked perfectly. That's great. Look,
did it?
Yeah,
I can't see.
yeah, that's all right. As long as you can see yourself, everybody else can see you. It's all good.
Yeah, all right.
Look,
I'll take it for it.
I just want to do a quick intro, since Scott and I have worked together for probably longer than he wants to admit. I think Scott's been doing this in and around 30 years. When I say this, he's a chartered accountant. He was a partner at E&Y and at Deloitte. Scott's been pretty much in every industry that I think exists. at one point in time. You must have started when you were 20, Scott, just so you know.
You're making me feel real old.
Yeah. Well, listen, you're not as old as I am, Scott. So there you go. Feel good about that. But
Yeah.
listen, maybe instead of me telling people about you, why don't you give us a brief overview of your company and kind of your role and what you're doing today?
Oh, well, I mean, my company is very, very small, and we focus on partnering with CFOs in an advisory capacity, working with CFOs in the entire finance department on finance transformations. It could be from an ERP perspective, right through to a performance management, EPM, CPM space. I've been doing it for 30 odd years, and I really don't know how to do anything else, to be honest.
like many of us. So
Yeah.
you go across a lot of companies. If there's anything I know about you, you got a lot of sticks in the fire, so to say. What are some of the things you're seeing today as far as the challenges? Certainly, with COVID and so on, and all the other challenges out there that kind of stand out for you.
Well, I thought about this question, and I thought, well, I could give my opinion, but it'd be far more valuable to people listening if that opinion was based somehow in fact. And I dug back through some old information, and I went to a big survey that was done, interestingly, just before COVID, that we did when I was at EY. And we surveyed 500 global CFOs. So, it was a pretty big sample size. And it was really interesting when I went back and re-looked at the feedback from that survey, how pertinent it is today, given what we've just all been through for 2 years. When you talk specifically about EPM, it was, and Thomas, you're right, you and I've been doing this a long time, but still even today, 42% of the CFOs that we spoke to around the world said they still spend 3 months or longer on their budgeting and planning process, and 32% of them said they spend 6 months or longer on the budgeting process. It's an awful long time, really. I come from a world of I don't actually believe in the annual budgeting process, but that's a whole other webinar, right? So,
yeah.
But there were four things that were highlighted as common across all CFOs that they saw as the challenges. And this is 2 years ago, but it's even more pertinent today. And the first one was the rise of digital and its impact on finance. So digital was once something that for the finance department left to the IT department. It's now something that CFOs and finance departments have to embrace. Smart technologies. All finance departments and CFOs have to do more with less in shorter timeframes. You can't do that by hiring people. You've got to do it by using smart technology. Data and analytics, again, something that I know as when I've been a chartered accountant, data and analytics, man, that's something the IT boffins do, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. It's now something we have to embrace and be a part of if we're going to be able to deliver. Risk and uncertainty, right? How pertinent is that given what we've just been through for a couple of years? And certainly what we're coming out of now. How do we take advantage of the new opportunities that we're seeing? Stakeholder scrutiny. We had the climate summits, COP26, and I call this the ethics of decision making. Companies are now having to report on triple bottom line, sustainability, diversity, and these are no longer emerging trends. These are things that stakeholders measure the value of our companies on, and if we're smart about it, they're ways of creating value in companies. So stakeholder scrutiny, that was number 3. And number 4, and I think the most important one, is data. We are no longer just the custodians of financial data. We used to be the sheriffs of compliance, right? Do what we tell you with reporting or you'll go to jail. We're not that anymore. That's a given. We have to understand how to use data better, not just financial data, all sorts of data, operational data, social media data. And the finance department is really seen as the central hub and the place that can bring all this data together and help organizations make better decisions with it. So they're the 4 that I would highlight.
Oh, look, that's excellent. Scott, I know two of them were technology focused, right? If you think about data and so forth. And I know you getting kind of back to the topic of our discussion today. I know you have implemented BPC in a lot of different places, right? Given that's kind of, SAP said, hey, look, we're going to kind of stop that and so forth. What, if you're listening today and obviously come to the webinar to get a little bit of knowledge around what should they do next? What do the people that kind of invested in SAP, how do they focus on, one of those four things you mentioned on a technology perspective, but kind of move forward?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, BPC really came to life in 2009 out of the acquisition of OutlookSoft.
Right.
And when OutlookSoft came out, I thought, this is fantastic. Here's a tool that can do your management and your financials in one application, and it runs on a common data platform called SQL. I thought, wow, how can we miss this stuff? This is so simple and yet so powerful. And SAP, when they bought it, it was very interesting to watch. And they did a smart thing. They didn't destroy it. They actually said, we like this, and we're going to port this same theory, this same method into our stack. So they ported it over onto a BW stack, but they did the right thing. They kept one application, a single user interface, a single admin console, to do your finance, to do your stats, to do your analytics and your reporting, all sitting on, albeit a proprietary database, but sitting on one data set, right? And I always thought this should be the easiest thing in the world. Why haven't we been doing this forever? For 20 years prior to this, we've always had two applications. They never talked. They ran different data sets, two sets of training. So BPC in its time was very good, and people liked it, particularly SAP customers. And I think I did about 50 implementations, and it worked really well. It fit really well. You could drill down through your transactions, all the things you're talking about, because you could go through BW, you could go through BW into ECC and look at your transactions. So, and then for some strange reason, the decision was made to move away from that. And decisions that big software companies make for lots of different reasons. And I understand, SAP wants everybody on S4, and so they took a decision to want customers to migrate into the S4 stack. And I thought, well, that's fair enough. They want people on S4. But what about the companies that aren't quite yet in that headspace to go to that journey into S4? Because it's a big, expensive, costly project. Where is a product that we can get our hands on that still does the same things? It still is a single performance management bench. It's one bench. It's underpinned by an open database, and I can do everything I need to do from a compliance perspective, my statutory accounts, my consolidations, my intercompanies, my tax, my exchange rates, and I can do my management side. And I've got the tools on the management side. I've got the reporting tools. I've got the analytics tools. I've got the BI tools. Where is something that can take the place of BPC and do this? And it shouldn't be hard, because BPC was successful for that reason. And that's, I think that's your cornerstone, right? That's your cornerstone of OneStream, right? So I think organizations have got to think about, finance organizations got to think about simplification,
right.
Reducing costs, because you've got to reduce your costs, and integration is a huge cost. It's a hidden cost, but it's massive. Moving away from proprietary, moving to open databases like Azure, where you've got access to all sorts of information and tools, and putting a really powerful single application suite across that allows you to run your performance bench in finance. So, that to me has got to be, if you're a BPC client, you don't want to throw away the good things you've got. You want to build on what you had.
Scotty, look, apologies if I'm kind of going off our plan, but what's the first thing you would do as an SAP client that has BPC, knowing it's going away? What's the very first, what are the first 2 or 3 steps that you would take tomorrow if you knew you were going to replace it?
Well, first of all, I mean, if I'd successfully implemented BPC from the statutory side and the budgeting side, I'd want to look at the ability of continuing to have a single application, because as soon as I break that, I break a golden rule, and I've got to start integrating, and integration's not cheap. It can be unreliable, and if you want to be real time, you can't wait for stuff to integrate in 24 hours before you drill down. And the pressures on finance are to provide that information for people to be able to drill down now. I see a number I don't like. I'm not going to wait 2 days to find out what's the root cause of it. I want to know now. And so the first thing I'd be trying to do is maintain that simplification, right? The second thing I'd want is I'd want a data set, a database that sits underneath it, which is inexpensive, because data's got to be inexpensive. Data can't be proprietary anymore these days. Data's got to be open. The hyperscalers like Azure, they scale horizontally, not vertically. So I only pay for it as I need it, but I want to be able to get other data. I don't think finance anymore is just the purveyor of finance data. I think it has to be able to bring in everything that is non-financial, combine it with my financials, and then be able to take that information with the smarts of drill downs and scenario modeling, to be able to take that and to be able to partner with the business and say, hey, you know what? Look, here are your financial numbers, but here's a whole bunch of other stuff. If you're in retail, you want to look at sell-through from your competitors. If you're in manufacturing, you want to look at, well, what's best practice in this industry, and where do we sit in relation to that? So I think that's finance's job, to take that information, combine it, and then go out and sit down and be a business partner with the organization, and move away from that sheriff of compliance to a business partner of the future.
Look at that. It's such a good point. And it's funny, it's the one thing we find different with people that make huge investments in SAP, they tend to be more IT driven. And I don't know if you find that in the market, where it's, it seems to be just kind of an IT system, and almost driven by IT. Do you find that to be the case?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, SAP, and again, let's be, credit where credit's due. SAP, yeah. ERP, wow. I mean, 75% of the world's enterprises run it, right? They run it for a reason. Because it's good and it works, and people audit it and love it, and it keeps the board out of jail. But yeah, it is a very technical product. But let's not forget, SAP technology and the code base for that thing is 50 years old. And sure, there's S4, but these things were all developed prior to the rise of cloud and inexpensive technology in the cloud, right? And so I think there's a place for both. I think there's a place to have our ERP, absolutely, because a lot of companies are calling it Fortress ERP, right? You keep it there, and that's your transactions, and you don't mess around with the transactions. But they don't allow you to make business decisions about the future of your company. That's looking out the rearview mirror. But the place for the cloud and the place for open applications and APIs and doing better with your data, that's the bit that you take what's in your ERP, you combine it with everything else, and that's the bit you look out the windscreen of the car, right? And so, sure, you've got your big technical ERP, and there's still a lot of IT-driven IT, you've got to make sure that thing runs 120%. No doubt about it. But the tools now that are non-technical, that are finance owned and managed, that are business owned and managed, are now there and available to us. And that's what we as finance professionals need to grab hold of and embrace to move ourselves into what you call, I guess, the future of finance, right?
Look, absolutely. Scott, we could certainly go on just on that vein for another 2 hours. It's interesting because what we find with the people that have adopted OneStream that are SAP, it's always a business issue. It's never an IT thing. It's always, hey, I want to do this type of reporting, or I want the flexibility to bring in other information that doesn't sit in SAP. And I guess that's kind of what I'm hearing from you, is that business driven, kind of decision to the business driving that technology decision and not the other way around. Yeah.
Oh, look, 100%. And I think, you know, how often do we talk to companies and companies say, I want to be able to do this, and I just want to be able to build an ad hoc report, or I want to be able to look at a dashboard. I want to be, but then the problem is, how quickly does this aspiration devolve itself in literally minutes and hours down to an IT problem?
Right.
And I think we've got to say, as finance professionals, we've just got to say, no, not anymore. I'm not, it's not an IT problem anymore. And I'm not just not letting it become someone else's problem. And it takes 6 months or 12 months to build and get a report. And it shouldn't, because the technology is available. It's not expensive. It's easy to get hold of and play with. And I just think we've got to embrace it and not be afraid of it and say, no, enough's enough. It's time I took ownership of this, you know.
Yeah, look, great point. And why don't we use that to segue over to Ben and Phil and Karina, because talking about taking ownership, that's exactly what they have done. Scotty, thank you. You're going to stick around for a little bit when we get the Q&A, yeah? And we certainly got to get to the gin tasting part. I know you're going to stick around for that, right?
I'm not going before that, trust me.
Look, that's great. Look, I'm going to turn it over to Ben. Ben, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself, and Karina and Phil, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Thomas. Look, yeah, my name's Ben Tester. I'm National Manager of Business Development at Taysols. We've been delivering EPM solutions for over 19 years. We've been a OneStream partner for over 4 years, nearly 5 years now, and we're Australia's first gold partner. We've got offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Perth, and we've been delivering OneStream solutions in Australia for some of the largest organisations such as Wesfarmers and Downer, and of course 7 Group Holdings, SGH, who we have on the line today, and really appreciative to have their time. Thanks so much to Phil and Karina. Let me just jump in and maybe we can kick off with some introductions, maybe a bit of a brief overview of your organisation and your role there.
Yeah, g'day Ben, and hello to everyone out there. Briefly, in terms of 7 Group Holdings, we're a diversified operating and investment business. We're listed on the ASX. We effectively own 100% of WesTrac, which is a Caterpillar dealer in WA and in New South Wales ACT, and they're one of the top 5 globally ranked Caterpillar dealers on a number of metrics. We also own Coates Hire 100%, which is Australia's largest equipment hire company. You would have seen their equipment all around the city during any infrastructure project, and so we own Coates. And then recently we've just acquired 70% interest in Boral, which is one of Australia's premier construction materials businesses. Also have some operations in the United States that they're currently in the process of divesting. As well as that, we also have an interest in energy. We have a 30% interest in Beach Petroleum that we equity account. And we also have an investment in SGH Energy, which has a couple of fields, one Crux, which is in Western Australia, another one Long Tom in the Gippsland Basin, which are gas focused fields. And we also have a small investment in an oil and gas project in the US called Bivens Ranch in Texas. And then lastly, but not least of all, we also have a 39% interest in 7 West Media, which is Australia's premier television network and also owns the West Australian newspaper. So that's the group. In terms of my role, I'm the Deputy CFO. I've been with SGH now for 20 months and joined literally just at the time we were rolling out OneStream into our 30 June year end in 2020. And I've got with me today Karina Martin, and I'm sure Karina can introduce myself. Karina is a Group Financial Controller at SGH.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, everybody. Karina Martin. I've been with 7 Group Holdings just on about 7 years, so in their finance team.
Great, thanks. And Phil, that's quite a diverse range of, I guess, companies and different areas that 7 Group Holdings own. So I'm sure that presents some of those plenty of challenges. Karina, I guess I'll throw this question to yourself. It'd be really interesting to know what was happening within the organisation prior to selecting OneStream. I know at TASOLs we see a lot of organisations with similar challenges to yourself in terms of that diverse range of organisations and companies that you own, and at different percentages as well. Trying to bring all of that data together and doing a lot in Excel. Be really interesting to hear how things were working at SGH prior to selecting OneStream.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Ben. So prior to moving OneStream, we were using SAP BPC for our monthly consolidation, and we'd been using that for around 3 years, but we were just finding it a bit more difficult to find employees who had experience in using BPC, as well as resources to help us support our application. So one of the attractions of OneStream was that it offered the multiple solutions on the one platform via their OneStream marketplace. And the reason that we found that appealing was because we could do a staged approach in adopting the module first for the consolidation and then looking to build on that as a foundation once we got the consolidation embedded. I guess the ideal outcome from our project was something that could streamline our monthly reporting and that we report through to our board, as well as support us in our statutory reporting obligations biannually, reducing our reliance on Excel and manual processes. And then the other attraction with OneStream was, as a cloud-based solution, it was fairly easy to deploy across our various business units.
Great. And so I guess with the manual processes and the Excel and the challenges that were in the within SGH at that time, what was the impact to the business?
I guess with our diversified operations, we're sort of spread out across Australia. So it was looking for something that could be used easily by our business units, but with our head office in Sydney providing a lot of support to our business units. So it needed to be flexible to have sort of various different input data sources in that they're all on different ERP systems. We have sort of WestTrack using SAP, but then Coates Hire is on a different one called Base Plan. So it needed something that would be flexible and allow for easy mapping of their data into our common chart of accounts. Not only do we have diversified operations, we also have foreign operations, which require calculation, equity account investments, and also minority interests. So we needed a system that we could rely on and trust to do those calculations accurately. Yeah,
fair enough. Karina, probably another one for yourself, because you were pretty close to how SGH came to select OneStream and involved in that process. So tell us a bit about that selection process and what were you hoping to achieve?
I think the main outcomes of what we were hoping is the ability to rely on the data and streamline and reduce our manual processes. So it was focused around obviously do preparation of monthly board reporting. So we need to be able to produce that on a timely basis and have integrity of the numbers coming out of the system. With OneStream being a cloud-based solution, it was easy to roll out and provide that unified platform to collaborate with data. And not only are we using it for the collation and consolidation, we're also using it as a repository of gathering other non-financial information, such as statutory disclosures or key statistics or aging of receivables. So we're actually now using it as sort of the one source of truth, which is a lot easier for us to have one place to look at, I guess, a repository. The other thing with SGH is we're always reviewing our portfolio, so we need a system that can be dynamic and change with acquisitions and divestments in a relatively simple way. And I guess we're seeing that at the moment as we currently consolidate Boral into our group in this half. So it's been a good test of our OneStream application now that we've sort of embedded our use of it. And then the other element is obviously intercompany transactions across our group. So a lot of our entities do trade with each other. So we need a system that's easy to tag these intercompany transactions so that we can eliminate them and flag any intercompany breaks that need investigating.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's quite comprehensive. I guess, key to that was getting the OneStream solution in and working for SGH. Talk us through your implementation.
Yep. So in order to implement the project, we partnered with TASOLs and it was a relatively quick project. We adopted a phased approach. So the first phase being the consolidation and getting it working for our group reporting. and then added sort of modules on after that. So we created a steering committee with KSL representatives as well as SGH, and then looped in our business units as we needed to oversee the project. But the OneStream team, who were in the US at the time, were also heavily consulted on the initial design document just to make sure we were sort of on track with our build.
Yep.
I think we were one of the first clients in Australia to go live with OneStream. So it was a bit of a joint project in that respect. We started our implementation around October 2019 with the view of using it kind of by December half year as a backup. And then we ran it in parallel for the 6 months through to June 2020 and used it as our primary source of reporting for the June 2020 statutory report. And then we kept BPC as a backup. But then from FY21 onwards, we've just been solely relying on OneStream as our source of truth. After we got the consolidation module up and working, we've added some extra functionality, such as automated our cash flow reporting by building forms and monthly movement schedules, which give us the added benefit of enhancing our statutory disclosures as well. And more recently, we're now looking to add our budget and forecast data loads in as our next project, which will enhance our monthly reporting. Yep.
Okay. And it's been pretty busy bringing Boral in as well, right?
We have, yes, with KSL's help. So
sure,
it's going along well.
I guess you've been using it for a little while now. Karina, you're probably one of the heaviest users of the solution. It would be great to hear what's your favourite thing about OneStream so far?
I think the trust that we have in the system. So it's fairly robust, but we also find it relatively easy to understand the back end and build reports and sort of understand the rules that have been built into the system. So a couple of us in the corporate head office are set up as administrators, and it is quite an intuitive system to use. And we also have the added benefit of adding validations to data, which gives us more reliance on the accuracy of the information being submitted by our BUs, which frees us up to analyse the data rather than just actually cross-checking that it's actually correctly loaded. So yeah, and the flexibility of the system, I guess. So it's very easy to drill down through to account level data to find the origin of the data, source, the profit centre, the cost centre, which makes sort of answering questions and analysing the data a lot easier. And then obviously you can export the data into Excel or use the Excel add-in to enhance some of our ongoing reporting.
Great. Thanks, Karina. Phil, to throw over to yourself, you've been sitting there patiently. Talk us through some of the business benefits or ROI that you've maybe already seen since implemented.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I think the main benefit, I think, initially was that had a lot of information submitted outside of systems, so outside of BPC. So you had a lot of Excel sheets and other forms of information that we're using as part of that consolidation process, because I guess you didn't have, I guess as much flexibility as we were sort of seeing in OneStream. We now get, from a SGH perspective, we now get the business units themselves to load it. So previously they used to send it all into us, and then the group would literally spend the time to load it in for them into BPC. Now, given we've been able to get the guys at the business unit level familiar with the system, and we found that process actually easier. The system's quite intuitive. So I think that by them getting an understanding of it, they've been able to then do that responsibility and load it into the system themselves. And that's helped us as well by them taking more ownership over the numbers that they're putting in there. So rather than just once it leaves the building, they're forgetting about it. They're responsible for their submissions. And I guess there is some elements around process control and those things which you can do in OneStream, which we haven't yet turned on, but we see that potential in there when we get down the track. And that, I guess that important thing around, I guess the intuitiveness has been great from a training perspective. I guess there's a bit less of a fear factor in terms of trying to get the business unit teams across what they need to do in OneStream. It's easy to understand, and we find that, and that's helped by getting that better understanding at a BU level. That's helped with the quality of their submissions. And that, I guess, has helped also realise some time efficiency in our monthly reporting. You've got, a lot of that reduction in the amount of stuff set outside the system mean more things can be put into it. And then that means you're then getting a much faster sort of process on the close. and then you're having to do a lot less reformatting things to fit it into your consolidation process. It's sitting in the system. We get them to enter the information in the system, and that's not just financial information around your account balance level. It's looking at all your movements and those things. That really helps us, and helps us from a disclosure perspective as well. And so that process of putting the note disclosures together for our statutory reporting in December for a half year, and then a year into June, that's really helped make that process more efficient. And so by building in, I guess, those checks and validations in the system, so you can see that information that supports what's sitting in the accounts themselves, so that detailed analysis piece, that knowing that is the same, coming from the same source, etc., just gives us a lot more confidence in the numbers that are there. So, and lastly, I mean, the other thing, I guess, which probably the business units don't really like, is the ability to drill down. So if I see a number and I want to understand it at a group level, I can drill down through the business, just to the business unit, into the actual statutory entity to work out where the number came from. So that's what I'd say has sort of been the benefits from our side.
Yeah, and that last point, having worked with many clients and a couple of, I guess, legacy applications, that drill down is number one favorite thing that people love once they get their hands on OneStream, that's for sure. So Phil, you've been using it for a little while now at SGH. I'm sure the audience would love to know, what are some of the lessons you've learned so far on this journey?
Yeah, so I think firstly, Ben, it handles consolidation well. I think it does those, I guess, some things which are not, not always easy, things like equity accounting. And I guess we have some large equity accounted investments in both Beach and Seven West Media. It handles the accounting for those well. It also handles that, I guess, that foreign currency translation element. So whilst we don't have a lot of overseas entities, we do have a few. And I guess that part of making sure the translation's working, and you're able to set a rate at the group level, and that then applies across all the business units, and getting that consistency has been important. So I think from my own perspective, it's very similar to HFM. And so I previously used HFM at CIMIC and what was before then Leighton Holdings. And so because it is that, it's a familiar feel to that FHM product, it's much more, it's intuitive to pick up and easy to learn, as I sort of talked about. I guess the other aspect in terms of what I've learned, we've got an outsourced hosting arrangement with Taysols. What that's basically done, it means that you're getting all your patching and your updates of the versions being done automatically. You then you're able to rely on that external security environment. So the amount of time I've now had to spend, which I used to in a former role, around having to look at, well, what's the security over my platform? How are they doing backup and restore? And really relying on IT to do those elements. With that outsourced service, we're now getting more comfort that that's actually being done, and you've got a consistent approach to that across the network. So that's good. I guess the other piece, which I guess is one of the big selling points of OneStream, is that ability that within that ecosystem, you got a whole range of modules. And I guess we've been looking at some of those other things outside of that core consolidation reporting, which the system can do. And I guess that's where we're sort of slowly, reaching out and looking at, well, what else can the system do? Now we've got the compliance side sorted. What can we do? And else, what other value can it actually produce? Because it is it's not just that system. So that's something we've looked at, and we've started looking at, and we've just recently rolled out to our Westtrack business unit a account reconciliation module in OneStream, and that's effectively, we've done that as part of using those extra modules.
Yeah, great. And interestingly enough, your previous cohort have moved to OneStream as well, right? With CIMIC. So
they certainly have, and I think they even adopted it even before we did. So
it was a tight finish. It was pretty close, actually. So yeah. So any key takeaways you want to share with the audience, Phil?
Yeah, I think in terms of takeaways, I think having a good implementation partner is obviously that helps massively. When you're, I guess, particularly for us, when we're at the start of the time with OneStream had in Australia, it was very important to have not just someone who learned the system from a Taysol's perspective, who were implementing, but also that support from OneStream from the US as well. And now they're obviously established some presence locally as well. So that'll help. I think for us, the stage approach worked well. So just basically allowing you to, I guess, do it on a bite-sized basis. So trying to bring it in, focus really on that compliance element, which is the key part, but just making sure it worked really well. And then also that allowed you to understand it. And so the fact that the team could understand the system better, that's then allowed us to then start thinking about, well, what else can we do around those other elements? So looking at the things that we talked about around cash flow and the automation of cash flow. And also we're starting to look at, cash flow forecasting. The other thing, I guess, in terms of like with any of these products, having validations for me is really important. So just making sure that you've got, where you do have different data, for example, where you're trying to explain what's sitting in an account balance, making sure that those analysis amounts tie back automatically and validate. And that's one of those great things the system can do, is that it can say, yes, the total of that balance must equal that one. If it doesn't, flag it, or actually not allow you to actually submit it if it's wrong. So that saves you time at the group level in particular when you're trying to make sure that is it right? And that, I guess, and that validation process and that elements allows us to give us more confidence in, I guess, the numbers that you are reporting, and then ultimately in what you report to the market. And the last thing, I guess, from a sort of, what can you share? I think try not to customize. I guess that's probably a golden rule with any systems implementation. But if you don't customize it, you try and use what's available and the way that I guess people are recommending it works. Try and keep it to that, so it makes the process of upgrading a lot easier and moving from version to version much simpler if you don't try and customize. So that would be what I'd point to, Ben.
Yeah, cool. So a couple of things you mentioned a few times through this conversation was, I guess, the modular the modules that are available, as well as a phased approach. With that in mind, what's next for SGH with OneStream? Yeah,
so I guess given the nature of the group, we don't, as we're a holding company, we don't typically like to impose systems on the business unit. So on the companies that we have investments in, it's more around what works for them. The only exception to that being consolidation. So I guess given that we have that consolidation platform, and it's really the only true group-wide system, it's then looking at, well, what else can you actually get out of that? And so for us, as I mentioned, we looked at, we had a need for an account reconciliation tool within WestTrack. So as opposed to, looking at a potentially alternate system, we looked at what was available in OneStream and decided on a comparison basis to go with that. And we've just finished rolling that out in WestTrack literally last month. And so they're just in the process now of actually using it live. So that, and the idea that you're able to then, when you have a reconciliation system built into it, that you can actually drill not just to account level, but then into the actual, have a look at the rec itself to see what the reconciling items are. That's very powerful. I don't think there's a lot of that interface in between being able to sit at the top of the tree and drilling all the way down and then into recs was a good selling point. And I think that idea to keep, where possible, there's like this ecosystem. So use the OneStream ecosystem and try and get the most out of it. And the other thing I guess we're looking at the moment is we've got a need to sort of try and turn a more very manual forecasting process and try and improve that. And we've looked at and started looking at a few demos around what the OneStream offering is in that module around forecasting, and then also a cash management side. So we're also looking at what potential there is around cash management. So that's what's on the journey. But and that's where we're looking to take it from now. Excellent.
Well, look, that's been really insightful and great to hear from both yourself, Karina, and yourself, Phil, on the journey that you've been through with OneStream and Taysol's. And really appreciate your time and insight that you've shared today. Thank you very much. I'll hand it over to Thomas.
Thanks, Ben. Phil, Karina, that incredible insight and really valuable for everyone. I felt like an air traffic controller. I've got two other screens and I've got more questions on these screens than I know to start. I've been trying to kind of bring them down and just condense them. The first one really interesting, actually. Given you guys made a large investment in SAP. There had to be some concerns and so forth looking outside of SAP or whatever. And then the questions really around that is how did you manage the stakeholders that were invested in the SAP world? OneStream back then, we were certainly a newer technology than we are today. How did you manage to kind of get past that and show people the value?
I mean, I can have a crack at that one if you want, Karina. I think given the pedigree, I guess, of OneStream around it being, I guess, an evolution of HFM, and given I mean, the CFO has had a lot of experience with the HFM. That, I guess, gave a lot of confidence in terms of what the base performance of the system was going to be. And I think the fact that it is quite intuitive and is easy to understand from a outside looking in compared to BPC. If I was comparing the two, having seen both of them, I'd say that it was easier to understand. So I think, given that we also had, I guess, not as much ownership of BPC at a business unit level, it was very much seen as a group system. There wasn't a large amount of, I guess, resistance within all the business units. There certainly would be a little bit in one of our business units that has a real SAP stack. But look, I think that gave us confidence. We'd seen the demos. It had been used in the US. The feedback was all great. I think with reference sites and everything else were positive. So look, I guess being an early adopter, we were backing OneStream to deliver, and that's worked out, and we've been very pleased with it since. So I think whilst it's not as well known, I think if you look back at HFM, it wasn't always part of Oracle, and it effectively was the market leading system in that area. So this is like we view it as like an evolution of HFM to be taking the best bits of that from the console piece and then giving you other optional extras off the back of it. And that was, I guess, part of the overall push around. You get that base consolidation functionality, but you get the opportunity, if you need it, to then go and look at other elements, which then give you that connectivity. And that whole idea of being able to run, I can run actuals and then I can compare them to the forecast, compare them to the budget, all in the one place, running the same reports, and I can literally export them. I can put them into Excel, or I can just literally lift them out of the system and then put it straight into there. That makes a lot of sense, I think. And then once you tell people how to actually, or teach people how to build reports, and we've done that, we're able to start, once we understand the way the system works, you're able to start almost self-serving, and you're not getting the consultants in to come and write you in your report. You're able to work your way around through most of it and build it. So I think that's fair. I think we've had our accountants doing that from without a lot of training.
No, that's excellent. Phil, you made me feel very confident, because that the first 10 minutes is I try to say what you just said in 2 minutes. So thank you for that. And you actually had a lot more context to it than I did. The other one, and Karina, this may be focused more towards you, is can you count the tangible days you took off the close, or the hours, or the efficiency you gained?
Probably the key efficiencies are through the validation of the data. So we're no longer having to manually check that the system's sort of loading correctly and doing what it is. So as we touched on, we did run the systems in parallel for a period of time. So that did give us comfort over the accuracy of the data coming in. So we're probably saved, sort of a day on our month end process, but probably the real benefits for us are on the statutory reporting, where we're gathering sort of data, and rather than collating it manually in Excel to do either a left-hand book, which supports our annual report, or alternatively even just our sort of movement disclosure schedules, that's now being consolidated by the system rather than being done manually. So that's probably where our true time savings are.
And I think on the cash flow as well, Karina, has probably been a benefit there.
Yep. So cash flow we've just addressed more recently, and it's actually really nice to be able to rely on an automated cash flow. So.
Awesome. There's a host of questions all kind of lumped under user adoption. right? And you can have the best technology, the best implementation partners on the planet and so forth. Can you guys speak a little bit more to how your users adopt it, how they're, as you expand the usage, how you guys are keeping that in mind? I know it's kind of a broad one, but
I mean, I have a first crack at it, but Thomas, I think I think it's just it's pretty intuitive. I think is the only way to describe it is it's not as complicated, I think, in terms of like running reports and things being, there's a lot of, you select the entity, select the period, but it's like, you're literally drilling to period and to choosing the period when you want to look at, which business you want to look at. And then if you want to go, you can just keep going down into account and then even further. So I think, I think compared to, it's an easily accessible system. I think, I encourage people to have a look at a demo or whatever of it. And if you've had any experience using HFM, it's very, very familiar. So I think, and that helps. I think when you're trying to get people on board, it's web-based. So again, it's, it's like a browser. You can effectively go in there on a browser and do it. So you're not, it's visual, and I think that helps in terms of people getting used to it. And I'd say that, look, I think the other thing is in terms of we've been able to make it for the business units easy that they can load information into it. And because of the way that they can then check the data sitting in the system, it makes it easier for them and their submission side. So, and I think as I touched on it in the Q&A with Ben, but look, that ownership I think is important, and just trying to make sure that the guys at the BUs, not just that they're familiar with the system, how easy it is to use, or how that it is intuitive to use, but also that they're able to look at it, they're able to investigate problems themselves and try and work through, and because they can then drill at their level as well to try and work out, well, why doesn't that make sense? So I guess that classic finance efficiency piece that you're looking for around less time doing, more time reviewing. So again, you're getting a better quality of outcome because the system itself can give you that validation element to say, well, hey, A does not equal B, what's going on here? And so then you can run those checks, see the base level things are working and the loads are working, etc. That's all there. So that would be, I'd answer that one.
Yeah, look, it's a great answer. I mean, user adoption is absolutely critical, right? If you don't have that, you just got a great system sitting there, no one using. Just as a side note, we drink our own champagne at OneStream. We have forecasting done in OneStream, and we call it the ultimate idiot proof. If you can get idiots like me doing forecasting in OneStream, you can get anybody using OneStream. So it's going back to that user adoption. I think that's something that we've learned in the Hyperion world, that you have to make it easy to use and consume. And it's good to hear that.
Yeah, and I think
you guys have kind of taken that.
And from in terms of, like I said, there's always room for improvement. And so, look, sure. I guess we look at, again, well, how can we improve the BU's experience with OneStream around how can you make it even easier for them to load stuff in? So what do we need to help them around the way that they're extracting data from their own systems to make it as easy as possible? Because you can always manually load into OneStream if you need to. So you've got a small business that they can go in and manually enter in, or for your larger businesses, how you can suck the information in. So look, that it's got the flexibility to do both, and you can load at different levels. So I think from a budgeting and forecasting perspective, that's good because we've got very diverse businesses. They do budget and forecast to very different levels, but you can load in at different levels. So as long as if people want to do granular down to every dollar, we can do those. If people want to do, to balance sheet high level, we can load in at that level as well. And then you can aggregate the two. That's probably where I compare it to what my experience was using PPC at Helios, where you had to, it was done at the very lowest level. You couldn't just jump to just give me the summarized version. So that meant that, that as you talked about, or that Scott talked about, that the amount of time it's taking you to do your forecasting, you've got to do it right down to account level. That can suck up a lot of time. So it's just good in that flexibility that you can load it at different levels. So that's where it really can be powerful, in that it's not completely linked into the ERP. you can load it at whatever level you want.
Yeah. Look, this is fascinating and really appreciate it. The last one, and then we got to probably get on to Chris and my doppelganger Chris. There, we're going to get ready to come on camera in a little bit. We're getting a lot of questions around like, what was the biggest aha moment, or the biggest surprise, or the biggest like obstacle you guys had to get through to get to where you got today? And it doesn't have to be a OneStream thing. I think it was. I'm just getting a lot of, what is that one thing, or is there a one surprise that you got when you were implementing, good or bad, right? Hopefully good. That you would kind of go, yeah, I didn't know that going in.
You want to go, Phil?
You want to have a go at doing that one,
Yeah, I would love to see if they're the same. That would be great.
I guess my thought was the way that it didn't matter how the data came from our business units. They were coming from vastly different ERPs in different formats with different columns, and the system still could capture the data and put it into, I don't know what you call it, the cube view in the back of the OneStream thing. So we were getting, vastly different data sets coming through, and even with Bora, we're getting movement flows out of their HFM system, and the system can still manipulate that and put it in the right bucket. So I think that was one of the surprising things to me. But Phil, you might want to touch on yours as well.
Yeah, I think like with any IT project that you do, if you're putting in a new system, you always come up against something, whether it be the way that something's working when it's initially installed. And I think like anything, you've just it's very helpful having a reference point. I guess that's why we did the sort of the parallel run piece with BPC, just to say, hey, look, is it coming up with the same answer? Oh yeah, it is. Okay, well then that gives us confidence. Or hey, it's not. Well, how do we dig into it to find out? And I guess that from sitting at the top of the tree, trying to work out, well, do I have confidence in the system? That process of being able to, you can export the data out of both systems, do a comparison in Excel, and then really go, okay, is there anything really different? And then, but that's I guess the base level. But equally, I guess I think for me, it's getting those same benefits that you get out of having, I guess, from HFM around that, the ability to write your own reports and stuff is even better, I think, in OneStream than having one of your accountants sit there and write a report rather than having to get a consultant out. And I'm sure Tasols would prefer it the other way. But look, sure. That's a really refreshing thing. If you can teach an accountant how to write your report in a system, that's gold, because you're not just spending the consulting dollars, but also the person who writes the report understands it, and then their ability to then go, okay, why isn't it working, and also evolve it so it actually gets you really what you want. That's great. That's that easy ability to write stuff. That's good. So you can't. That wasn't something I was expecting. I was expecting to be a bit more like HFM, where it was a bit harder to get your reporting, but OneStream's even better than that.
Look, Phil, thank you. Karina, appreciate the time and the value. The information's invaluable, and I know everybody got a lot from it. So we also know this is not your day job. So thank you very much for taking time away. Mr. Taylor, I've got a bunch of questions lined up for you. We can't get to them. We're going to have to turn it over to Chris, and not have to, but really enjoying turning it over to Chris. So wanted to thank you guys. Please stay on. I hope you're going to enjoy some gin with us. It is 5 o'clock somewhere. You got to remember, right? So with that, Chris, I don't know if you can jump on the screen.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Karina. Now, I know you guys think you're seeing double between Chris and me. We look exactly alike. Hairdo's exactly the same. Just so no, that's not a WebEx trick. It's actually Chris is the one with the gin behind him. There you go. Never try to joke over this media, Chris. It's really hard to do. Anyway, look, I'm going to turn it over to you. Get off the screen and let you take us through this wonderful liquid in front of us.
Perfect. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Yeah, we're pretty much like brothers. If you see us together, me and Mr. Palmer, it's a tough call to figure out who's who. I'll usually be the one that smells a lot more like gin. I've been doing a lot of different sort of distillery methods and worked at a lot of different distilleries and bars in my time. This is probably the most efficient one I've seen. We do everything in an old school manner. So we do all our distillation at the same time, instead of what you'll see in a couple of new age bars and in Tanqueray and in other big companies like Hendrix, where they only distill each and every flavor individually and they add it at the end. We take all our ingredients, everything we need, put it into one still, and do it exactly the way it was meant to be done back in the day. It makes my life easy. It makes the life easy for the distillers. It's a lot more of a genuine product, and it comes out with some amazing gins. So hopefully you guys have a couple of little versions of these. I wish I could send you bigger versions. These are pretty much our core our core sort of gin range. So the Australian Dry here, this is the classic gin that everyone will be after. When you think of gin, you'll be thinking of the smells and the tastes coming out of this one here. When you think of gin, you'll also think of juniper, hopefully. These are just these little juniper berries. They're nothing like a berry. So if you're about to eat them thinking that's going to be sweet and raspberry-like, you are very, very wrong. It is a dry, piney, oily flavor, very distinctively gin. It came about in the 1700s back in the Netherlands, where they would use it as a medicine. And then the cheeky Brits took it over around the 1800s, started a big gin craze. It turned from a medicine to something that was actually eventually cheaper than beer. So it turned into the bottom class alcohol, the bottom class of the barrel. So there used to be gin districts. They are your sort of scary places full of just alcohol and bars from back in the day. And they were very dangerous back in the day. But gin districts now are more quaint neighborhoods, a bit more high-end, high market. But this guy here, feel free to open your bottles, give anything a smell, give anything a sniff, pop some in some glass, have a little wash around your mouth, get yourself drinking a little bit, because you want to acclimate your tongue to experiencing these flavors. There's a lot of nuance in the way that gin's made. There's a lot of subtleties in the way that alcohol is developed. And once you get a bit deeper into understanding the way that you want these alcohols coming forth, it helps you understand the actual end product that people are producing. Opposed from this very classic traditional juniper forward gin, which goes amazingly with tonics and martinis and Negronis, we have on the other end of the spectrum this, which is our coastal citrus gin. This leads away from the more traditional bitter flavors, the more medicine-like herbaceousness, the grassy notes. It's leading itself toward being a very, very citrus-based gin, very citrus-forward. So the idea behind that is when you have your tonics, which are quite sweet, which are quite bitter, it'll be balancing a little bit more evenly than if you had a nice dry gin. So it's really, really good for cocktails, nice citrusy cocktails, any sort of gin and tonic. Chucking a little bit of lemon in there really blows everything up. Or you can contrast the garnish and put something that you feel will lead away from the factors and the main flavors. So if you want, your citrus heavy gin with your citrus tonic and your bit of sweet tonic, you can put a bit of black pepper with that, or a bit of rosemary, anything that brings the other senses around to other flavors. Because then it becomes a bit more like a canvas that you're kind of going over instead of just these big, big flavors one by one. After that is the one that makes everyone happy. It is the pink gin, the Lily Pilly gin. So this is an enormous seller. It's amazing as an alcohol. It works with everything. So it can be in a martini, it can be in a Negroni, it can be in an old fashioned if you fancy that sort of stuff. It can be in an aviation, Tom Collins, Gin Ricky, anything that you like. Really, really great in tonics, sorry. But you don't want something to overpower it because it is going to be quite sweet. The reason that it's pink is we macerate the entire gin batch in raspberries. So nice native raspberries gives it a really nice pinky color and a really, really floral, sweet aftertone to it, which is why everyone loves it. It leads away from being your more classic style gin, which is very, very distinct, very full on, very forward, to a bit more of a subtle, sweet, delicate flavor on the nose and on the palate. this is pretty much everyone's favorite gin. It's drinking on easy mode. It is one of the loveliest products that we have in here. It's the one that everyone loves. It's the one that people want. I want that pink drink. That's the one they're talking about. But each have their own specific need or specific flavors that complement better with them or against them. And it's more or less just completely up to you guys trying to think, you know, I want to be drinking something a bit more juniper heavy, or you can tone it down and say, I want something that doesn't take away from the tonic as much. So it's completely up to your profiles and your flavor palette and the way you want to do things. I'm never going to come in and tell someone that you should use this gin with this tonic and this garnish, because at the end of the day, it might not suit your preference. It's all about making sure that the people, especially yourself, you're enjoying something that you are comfortable with and something that is a bit fun, a bit new, a bit exciting. Because then you don't want to be sitting at home having a gin and tonic, same garnish, same gin, same tonic, any night. It gets a bit boring, but that's the beauty of gin. You can do whatever you want with it. As long as it's still got juniper in the actual product that you distill, you can legally call it gin. So you just want to make sure that you're getting some fruits in there, getting some spices, dry herbs, anything that'll make it a bit more of a better experience, a bit more of a full experience for you. But there's no right or wrong way to drink gin. That is an absolute assurance there. But I mean, if you guys have any questions, you guys want to chat anything about gin, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. When it comes to distilling and whatnot, we can legally distill whatever we want in any country, but we need to figure out how to put it under a blanket term. So that's why we distill gin, because it's easier than making botanical vodkas, which we do make, but there will eventually be a new label. Would you say Australian gin is better than gin in the UK? Absolutely up to preference. I really like old English style gins, juniper heavy. I reckon they're the gin that I enjoy the most. But if it was the summertime and I wanted something with a big bit of tonic or in a punch, I'd go for something a little softer like the Lily Pilly. But it's a fair question. I think it's definitely up to the way in which you view the products and their prestigiousness and the way that you enjoy them. Why has gin increased in popularity? That is an amazing question. I have no idea why gin has increased in such popularity. I think it was seen as a bit of a medicine for a while, then it was seen as old-fashioned, and then it was kind of a bit outdated and outclassed, and newer, younger spirits were coming up, your rums, your agricoles, all the sort of brandies that you're kind of getting accustomed to now. But gin has been around since 1700s, so it's one of the older spirits. It can be aged if you want it to be aged, which really gives it a nice sort of woody spice. There's a traditional drink called a Martinez, which is traditionally made with a sort of barrel-aged style gin. And we sell one of those in our venue as well, which is one of my favorite gins that I've ever drunk in my life. But yes, it has just popped out of the blue. It's become so much more of a hot commodity. Everyone's doing it in Australia. It's a wild time to be making gin.
Hey, what's behind you, Chris? What's all that stuff behind you?
So I've got little tiny bits, so little containers, little canisters of different things. So we got blood lime there. It's just blood lime. Because if we were going to have a gin tour or a gin distillery make some gin, we'd use the little stills here. So we pretty much get the still, fill it up with botanicals, all the botanicals you'd ever desire on the table there and whatnot. And then you pick your cores, and then you pick your other sort of botanicals and your flavors, and you make a gin. It is one of the simplest, most easy distillation process and methods that can legally be done around the world. But I mean, if I was anyone, I would look into buying a still and making my own alcohol. It is amazing fun. It is something that saves you a lot of money. You'd be surprised how quick it is. You'd be surprised how easy it is. I don't know about the legalities behind it all, so I might be, selling you off here. But it's quite an experience. It's quite nice knowing that this thing that is almost like enigmatic and it's been glorified to these points and then put in these bottles and sealed with wax. You can make those. You can make those if you want. You just have to have a certain amount of information, and you can make whatever flavors your heart desires. So it's really quite, it takes a bit of the joy out of it because it's so simple. But when you're good at the simple versions of it, it is amazing, amazingly easy, amazingly enjoyable as a job, as something to taste, as something to do. It's quite a hobby to have.
I got to ask you, how did you get involved in this?
How did I, what, sorry?
How did you get involved into this?
Oh man, I've been working in bars for my entire life. I used to work in a bar where we had to change the menu every single day. I've worked in bars that are like top 10 in the world. I've worked in some distilleries in Australia, some overseas. I just love the process. I love the respect that it gets universally in any country. I just feel like if you can learn from something that you can make a lot of money off, why not do both at the same time? So it makes my job more interesting instead of coming into work and being like, I'm not sure if I'm going to learn today. I learn a new thing every day. It's a beautiful environment to learn and be in working. But yeah, I've just been doing it for the majority of my life at this point. So it's a good bit of fun.
Look, that's awesome. I'm getting kind of pinged with all kinds of like, why, this is a weird one. Why no ice? I don't know what the question is. Why not put ice in gin?
Well, it's all entirely down to preference. If I was drinking a whiskey, I'd open it up a little bit with ice or water because it dilutes it a bit, and then you can taste some of the more subtle flavors behind it. Yeah. And also, I got a question here. People are very excited about different tonics, and when coming to mixing the different gins, what are my favorite mixes? Yeah. I make all my own cordial out of everything. I make all my own tea. I make all my own weird stuff. But it comes down to you. If you've got a little bit of lemon in your house, or a little bit of sugar, a little bit of honey, a little bit of any fruit or even spice or vegetable that you want to try, gin and basil and cucumber is amazing. You can really be quite creative with it, because in the same way that you'd be mixing drinks in a bar, you can do the same with gin, and it works almost perfectly with mixing other ingredients because it does have those subtleties. So when it does get diluted and you mix other flavors into it, the other flavors pull out the more subtle notes of the gin you'll be drinking or the tonic you'll be drinking, and it kind of all ends up working together a bit more freely instead of being like, this only works with this. Everything works if you have the right mindset about what the flavors you want coming through are. So as long as you're picking out a couple of vegetables or fruits or anything that you enjoy, what does cucumber do to gin that makes it taste so nice? It makes it soft. It softens it down. It makes it feel fresh and light. Hendrix are really famous for doing gin and rose water in their Hendrix gin. So they do it as a distillate. They get a bunch of cucumbers, and usually you'd use dehydrated goods because it makes a better oil content, but with the dehydrating cucumbers, you lose a lot of the content. So what you'd want is you'd make a cucumber distillate. So you'd pretty much make a spirit that is entirely cucumber distillate, just cucumbers distilled. And then you'd add that to your other gins and whatnot as a distillate. But cucumber is almost the perfect garnish when it comes to gin. It's soft, it's fresh, it's bright, it's non-offensive. It can let other more sort of spice-driven flavors come a lot better through the gin. If I'm at home, I'll always have a cucumber and a bit of gin because I know that there's no way to lose that battle.
That's fantastic. All right, you got me going. That's what I'll be doing tonight, Chris.
I bloody hope so. I hope you got the big bottles sent over to you, mate.
Oh, I didn't, but I only live about like I said, about a 5-minute bike ride from you. So
okay, I'll see you a bit later then.
Look, I wish we had more time for this.
No, it's completely understandable. Thank you so much for giving me the time.
Absolutely fascinating. And I think it's I love the idea of learning something new every day. So that's beyond cool. That's what life's about. So thank you for sharing and dropping the knowledge and so forth. And look, Paul, on here, I'm getting on another media. Thank you for doing what you're doing and joining today. We really appreciate it. I know I learned a lot. So very cool.
I'll see you soon, hopefully. But I hope you guys have a good day. Cheers for that.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Bye.
All right. I think we only have one. We got a last poll, I believe, coming up. I believe it should be popping up here soon, and then We'll end promptly at 5. Oh, there you go. Would you like to know about more about arranging a meeting with OneStream? Or with Chris? There you go. All right. Look, that's great. We probably should end it here. We'll give you a minute back in the day. Look, thank you, everyone, for coming. So, we had 38 people at the start, and we ended with 51. So, fantastic. We appreciate, all the time, Karina, Phil, and Ben and Scotty took, and the time out of your day to join the webinar. So thank you very much. And then, hopefully we'll see everybody in the future. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Thomas.
Absolutely.